one Jewish state on the land as to which the Jewish people have a better claim of title than any other people, any other land in the world. It's just one. It's the size of New Jersey. Just let us have it already. Enough.
Today we're joined with a close friend of TBN and a close friend of the Israeli people, former U.S. Ambassador David Friedman, who is a unique character. He is one of the architects of the Abraham Accords, the best-selling author of the book Sledgehammer, and his new book that's coming out very soon to stores around the world, One Jewish State, attempts to solve the problem of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Ambassador Friedman, thank you for being with us again, and it's good seeing you.
Mati, good to see you safe and back from the army, and God should continue to protect you and all the soldiers who are defending Israel.
Amen and amen. So let's talk about you for a sec.
Sure.
You were a very unique American ambassador to the State of Israel. I would say historical, in the sense that in your time in office, the U.S. did something that it was on the fence about for my entire lifetime, I guess, recognizing the Golan Heights and moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem almost overnight. I want to start with a loaded statement. I look at what America or the U.S. has done for Israel in the last going on 11 months. And in my book, from what I've seen, more weapons, more funds, more support than I think any other administration in history. You know much more about American politics than I do. What is your take on that relationship between Israel and the U.S.?
I think the first question you have to ask is, how did we get to this spot? And did America have a role in the calamitous?
I haven't thought of that.
Okay, well, I think you got to start there, because Iran, we left office, it was broke.
Yeah.
Qasem Soleimani was dead. The U.S. was deeply feared by the Iranian nation. Fast forward to just a year ago, their GDP was more than double, from like $200 billion to $450 billion. What did they do with the money? They didn't build hospitals, they didn't build schools, they didn't build roads. They armed the Houthis, they armed Hamas, they armed Hezbollah. Without that, I don't think the lubricant would have existed for October 7th to have occurred. That's number one. UNRWA. We knew UNRWA was a bad organization. We cut it off completely. Okay, we knew that the Palestinian Authority was using money in ways that aided terrorism. We cut that off completely. Okay, Biden turned it completely on. Okay, we had a team of people that were determined to break the backs of terrorists, and Biden brought in a team of people that were essentially appeasing terrorists. Even now, as we're speaking, there's about 12 ships, protecting Israel from Iran. That's fine, but it's too little, too late. Number one, and number two, they're only playing defense. They're using that assistance to leverage their way into the war room. And in fact, Blinken and Austin and Sullivan were in the war room like every other week over the last 10 months, and they were handcuffing Israel. They were not allowing Israel to go on offense. They were giving them the resources to play defense. But look, on a soccer field, you could have the greatest goalie in the world.
Yeah. If
you don't have offense, you're not going to win the game. So I think Israel's been handcuffed. I think they could have won this war a lot earlier, a lot more decisively. And I'll just use one last example. Rafah, right? Yeah. They were begging Israel not to go into Rafah. They were directing Israel not to go into Rafah. They were withholding weapons. What would have happened if Israel would have listened to the United States and not gone into Rafah? They wouldn't have won the war. They wouldn't have discovered the entire route in the Philadelphia corridor of tunnels and tunnels and tunnels and weapons between Egypt. That was the source of all the weapons that were coming in. So I would say to you that they could have been worse, but not much worse. And they certainly could have been way better. I would be much more comfortable if we were still in office over the last 10 months.
I've heard the claim, and I think personally agree with it, where the projection of power by the U.S., or the lack thereof of it, under the Biden administration, is what allowed all these different things to take place.
We didn't project weakness. We shouted weakness from the rafters, and incompetence. You got to be feared in this part of the world by your enemies. Not really, it's not liked, it's feared. That's the emotion that brings peace.
So can we play a guessing game for a second?
Sure.
If Trump was in the White House when this war broke out, and let's say it did break out on October 7th in the same way, how would things be different?
Oh, look, I think the war would have ended much faster and more decisively. I think the messaging from America would have been, Israel was attacked in an unspeakable level of barbarity and cruelty.
Yes.
And so no dual messaging here. It would have been win this war as quickly as you can, as overwhelmingly as you can. And I think that would have sent the right signals to Hezbollah not to intervene. You know, Biden kept saying, you know, I've got one word for, you know, Iran and Hezbollah, don't. He kept saying, don't. Every time he said that, they would attack. The red lines were so completely blurred that, you know, if I were an enemy of Israel, the message I'm getting from the United States is you can attack. Now, maybe you can't attack, you know, the Kyria or the Knesset,
yeah,
but you can attack. Mati, it's sort of like the message he gave Putin, right? Which he said, look, don't take too much of Ukraine. You know, if you just take a little bit of Ukraine, it's okay, but not too much. This messaging is death to a peaceful resolution, you know, on acceptable terms. Look, it's all about deterrence. When you lose deterrence, you really lose the ability to protect your citizens. And when America is perceived as handcuffing Israel, it does impact adversely that deterrence.
President Biden seems to be the kind of guy who genuinely cares about the state of Israel. You look at his track record, he's done this throughout his career. At the same time, it looks like he's speaking sort of duplicit messages, hoping that he can get away with it. But in his heart, my impression was he actually cares about Israel and the Middle East.
I don't really care what's in his heart, to be honest with you. I mean, I think, you know, my approach is, you know, I pay for results. Results here mean Israel is strong and the area is stable and we have maximal peace, minimal instability. Those are the results we want.
Yeah.
Biden's not getting us there. He is not enabling Israel to be Israel, to make defensive and offensive decisions necessary to defeat its enemies. You know, you have to win a war. I mean, Israel got attacked. They didn't ask for this fight. They didn't ask for this war. And they just have to win it. And when they win it, okay, the prospects for peace among the community of nations that want peace is infinitely greater than if you end up in this kind of, you know, equivocal area where you don't really know what happened. And Biden doesn't get that. Maybe it's not a function of his heart. Okay, sure, he loves Israel. Maybe he does. And I would say, you know, love me less and just give me what I need to win the war. That's what Israel's message should be. You know, in the words of Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it?
I love that. So to your point, though, is this the structure of the parties, and we have to have a Republican president in the White House to really get that level of support? I wouldn't even call it bipartisan, just support across the board in the U.S.
I think where the Republican Party is going is exactly where Israel needs to go, right? Which is Israel can no longer be a client state of America.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be a more mature relationship. America is just sick of the Middle East. To most Americans, the Middle East is a place of just, you know, unending conflict and instability. Israel is frankly, the linchpin of changing that. But I think what most Americans want is for Israel, you know, together with the Saudis, the Emiratis, to lead the move towards stability, to keep let America take a step back and let their allies do the heavy lifting, which means that Israel has to have the resources, it has to be able to arm itself, it has to have, you know, the infrastructure to be, you know, on its own, by itself, you know, a regional superpower.
Yes.
And I think for America to facilitate Israel becoming a regional superpower and then taking a step back and saying, okay, guys, go ahead and police this area a little bit. You know, form alliances with your friends will help to facilitate it. I think that's where the Republican Party is going. I think, frankly, it's good for America and good for Israel.
Do you think there's a chance, even after this war and even after all these events, to take the Abraham Accords several steps forward?
Oh, sure.
Is that still on the table?
Look, the only thing that weakens the advancement of the Abraham Accords, this may be counterintuitive to people, but the only thing that weakens it, and this I'm sure, and you're going to have to trust me on this, is a weak Israel. The quicker Israel wins the war against its enemies, because these are the same enemies that Saudi Arabia has and the Emirates have and other moderate Sunni nations have. The quicker and more decisively Israel wins, the more reliable and more attractive a partner it is with the Abraham Accord countries. Okay?
Why is that?
Because this is fundamentally an alliance of moderate nations against extremists. The ability to stand up against extremists is the currency of the realm, if you will. It's the asset that makes everybody attractive to each other.
If you've stuck around so far, you're probably enjoying this content. So make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And there's a little bell in YouTube that makes sure you never miss another show. So make sure you press it And thank you for watching and following us. So tell us about your new book. You have a new book called One Jewish State.
Yes.
What's it about and what triggered you to write it?
Well, what triggered me to write it was the October 7th, the polling in Judea and Samaria, that about 82% of the Palestinians supported the October 7th massacre, and the efforts by Biden and other Democrats to say the solution here, the way we fix this is we have a two-state solution. I mean, give the 82% population that wants to continue to slaughter the Jewish people, give them a platform and a state from which to continue.
You're referencing the polls that came out where the population of Judea and Samaria was more supportive of the massacre than the population of the Gaza Strip.
Yes, it was about 82%.
Which is bizarre on every level.
But it is bizarre. So, it's the only book that actually says, okay, not only do we not want a two-state solution, but here's what we do want. The real solution is to let the Abraham Accords countries help Israel, under Israeli supervision, bring the Palestinian population in Judea and Samaria up to the same level as Israeli Arabs. 20% of Israel is Arab, right, more or less. Haifa University is like almost 40% Arab.
Yeah.
The major elite universities are overrepresented by Arabs. Israeli Arabs. The most successful ethnic group in Israel are Christian Arabs. Most successful. Highest home ownership.
More than the Jews.
More than the Jews.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Better educated, more doctors, more lawyers. 20% of the Israeli population, which is Arab, Israel seeks to empower. Okay? And that's a great credit to the state of Israel, given the threats that it faces, and it doesn't even seek to get credit for it, and they should. I see people already who haven't read the book. They say, oh, you're advocating, colonialization, more apartheid. No. It's about taking people and bringing their lives up to a standard of living that Israel can be proud of.
Yeah.
And I think it tries to take a very complicated situation and bring about the most practical, most achievable solution for everybody.
Have you talked to political leaders about this idea? What kind of feedback are you getting?
I say the mother's milk of the Democratic Party is the two-state solution. Until they're convinced that it's not going to happen or that there's a better alternative, they're the tough sell. I think in the Republican Party there's a lot of support. I think in Israel there is support. I think there's also what does it mean? Who's going to pay for it? There's a lot of public service, to people, to the citizens of Israel. We're going to provide that to another 2.5 million Palestinians, some of whom want to kill us. I mean, how does it all work? So there's a lot of questioning. Some people say to me, we don't want to own Jenin. We don't want to own Tulkarem. These are places that are radicalized and that are, planning attacks on Jews every single day. And it doesn't mean that you ignore the risks. It doesn't mean that if people are trying to kill you, you don't try to kill them first. But there is a meaningful population within that area that I believe will respond favorably to more opportunity, to better healthcare, to better education, to hospitals. My goal is not in a year to redraw the map of Israel. My goal is that within a year, when we speak about this, it becomes on par with a two-state solution as a legitimate, basis for discussion that doesn't provoke outrage and insults and all that kind of. People read it, think about it, and give it a chance to really develop as a concept, and I think it's a good one. Mike Pompeo wrote the foreword to my book. He said, why would anybody be surprised that God's will also represents the best, geopolitical outcome for everybody affected? And so why not do what God intended, especially when it makes everybody more prosperous and safer?
What you're talking about is a demographic issue that people have always been afraid of. What happens when we're no longer the majority in this country?
No one suggests that Israel should substitute a national security risk for a demographic risk. I mean, Israel is, by law of the Knesset, approved by the Supreme Court, affirmed by the Supreme Court, it is a Jewish state, and it has to remain a Jewish state. And one of the points of one Jewish state is like saying to the world, come on guys, there's over 40 Muslim states. There's a whole bunch of Christian states and Buddhist states, and just one Jewish state. Let us have one Jewish state on the land, by the way, on the land as to which the Jewish people have a better claim of title than any other people, any other land in the world. It's just one. It's the size of New Jersey. Just let us have it already, enough. And I think the cost of that, if you will, is that the territories that Israel will become sovereign to, that are Palestinian, will have to be looked at. And I use the example along the lines of Puerto Rico in the United States. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. The people in Puerto Rico have certain rights that are akin to being citizens, but they don't vote in the national elections of the United States. Nobody accuses America of being an apartheid state. The point is this: Israel has to be a Jewish state, but there's no reason why Israel as a Jewish state cannot have sovereignty over Palestinian communities, under which they have far better, local autonomy and security and healthcare and all kinds of good things.
That's really interesting. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I want to end on a philosophical question. It's been a year of trauma and fear and pain for this country, and I think Jews around the world.
Yep.
And you're a father and a grandfather in this country. Where do you find hope for the future?
Well, look, I think the first thing is clarity. I think there's more clarity now. Just because something's clear doesn't mean it's good, but clarity is better than opacity.
What do you mean by clarity?
Well, I think we know who our friends are, we know who our enemies are, we know where we stand in the world, we understand the risks better than we thought. I think we see what's happening in Europe, we see what's happening, on college campuses in America. We understand what the challenges are. I mean, they're not fun to look at, they're troubling, but we have clarity. So we know what we have to manage against. That's number one. The second thing, and I think this is the much more important, we learned a lot about the people of Israel. Yeah. Through this war and this attack. The people of Israel are the greatest asset of the state of Israel. They're extraordinary people, deeply patriotic, even with massive disagreements, on policy and judicial reform and who they like or don't like to lead the country. I mean, lots of differences, but when push comes to shove and their backs against the wall, they're brothers and sisters like in no other country I've ever seen. And that asset was on full display. And you can't help but be optimistic after seeing that.
I 100% agree with you. When you know where you are in history and when you know who you are in history, everything lines up perfectly.
Absolutely.
Ambassador Friedman, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And I encourage everyone to read your new book, One Jewish State, on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very much.
it. Great to be with you.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.